Well, hello, Nathaniel and Will.
Good to be here.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining me for this chat about Iceball for the London Mountain Film Festival. We are straddling 3 time zones here, which is crazy, but we've got Will, you're in Minnesota in the US. I'm in the Chilterns near London in the UK. And Nathaniel, you're in Adelaide in Australia.
Yeah.
Amazing. And all different parts of the day and different seasons around the world. So thank you very much. I must ask, first of all, though, Will, is the lake still frozen outside your house?
No, it isn't. The lakes broke up a little early this year, about 10 days ago, actually, 10, 15 days ago.
Okay, so we're late April now, so that's interesting. So
Yep.
yeah, and when does it freeze again?
It generally freezes around the 5th of November, is at an average. So we have ice, right? We have a long winter up here, and 6 months. Climate change is changing a little bit, but we're actually getting some real cold weather along with warmer weather. And this year, when we cut ice, the day we had a high of 20 below Fahrenheit that day. So the cold weather is still here in northern Minnesota in the winter.
Oh wow. Well, firstly, congratulations on the film. It is a beautifully shot film, and also really full of. It's a hopeful film with very poignant messages, and of course, it's about the annual ice harvesting for summer refrigeration at the lake outside your home, Will, in northern Minnesota. For UK viewers, I don't think they know that part of the US at all, really. Can you tell me sort of how wild is it and why it's so special?
Oh, myself? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's we're right on the Canadian border of Minnesota and Ontario. And I'm right next to what's called the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, which is about 1 million acres of preserved land. There's thousands of lakes in this area. So it's the canoe country. Lakes that are connected by portages or rivers. The early voyagers passed through this area. Their main routes were just north of here, about 10 miles. So it's a wild country, roadless country. And we have long winters, but very beautiful summers, clear lakes that you can drink out of it. A lot of wildlife. I have wolves, constantly hear them every night, and a lot of beavers and so forth in the lake. So it's a beautiful country up here. All Canadian bedrock, very very old, solid bedrock. The bedrock here is about 2 billion years old, some of the oldest exposed rock in the world. So it's unique in itself, but it's not very unique north of here in Canada. This is what rules the far north is, and it's just a rare slice of Canada that right on the border that goes into Minnesota.
Wow. Well, it looks so stunning in the film. And so how far away are you from the nearest sort of town? Because I know you're off grid, obviously.
Yeah, the closest town is Ely, Minnesota, which is basically my hometown, about 10 miles away. I've lived up here for 50 years. I was originally raised in Minneapolis, the city, and moved out of the city in 1970. And first 25 years up here, we did not have a road in. We had a canoe and portage 3 miles to get in here, and we had dogs at that time to move in supplies, and I did with the dogs were involved in my expeditions also. But we put a road in 1990, so it's easier to get in. There's no electricity here, and we produce our own electricity, a lot of our food. I've been cutting ice for almost 56 years now. So it's, and I use ice exclusively as refrigeration, and we have large groups of people up here in our programs in the summer. So I've never used any fossil fuels for refrigeration, but it's a natural way of doing it. Something, let's say 80, 90 years ago, that's all the refrigeration there was ice. And but we just kept up. It's more than just a tradition, it's a function of the way we live up here.
Oh, and I want to talk about the history of ice harvesting a little bit more in a second. But Nathaniel, you obviously are in Australia right now. So how did you come across the story of Iceball and get to meet Will?
That's probably one of the most common questions I get asked. But basically, my mum's American and my wife is Minnesotan, and so is my mum. So I have a family connection to Minnesota. I'm half Minnesotan. and basically grew up here in Australia all my life, but then moved over to the US and was living there with my wife. And we basically, it was kind of my exploration to understanding what living in Minnesota is all about. And we started a project that was focusing on all these different stories across this place that was, like Will said, dominated by long winters, last 6 months of the year. And basically that path led me to discovering the story of Will Steger, the Ice Bowl, and pretty much as soon as we went up the first year, we were hooked. And it was literally like we'd stumbled into this hidden little world from Frozen. And so everything that Will's just described plus more is hopefully the magic we tried to portray in the film. And if anything, that was what I just wanted to come away with from that experience, was trying to bring a little piece of the Ice Bowl to everyone.
Oh, I think you did that brilliantly. And I want to just talk about some of your filmmaking techniques a little bit later as well. But Will, you've been doing it, as you say, for over 50 years, ice harvesting. How did you first come across ice harvesting before you started, inviting people to do it outside your own home? How did you know about the history and the practice?
About 50 years ago, I had access to a lot of the older people, and I was seeking that type of knowledge anyways, because I was destined to live off grid and off road. I had no idea I'd ever put a road into this place, but it was common knowledge back then, because anybody that was 60, 70 years old back then grew up with that age, before electricity, and ice was the main way, and I was always attracted to that, and it was just a natural way of doing it. Never really question it. I just say, yeah, you live in the wilderness, you wash in the sauna and you cut ice for your refrigeration. So it was just the way you do things in the wilderness. Especially if you're having a garden and you're supporting a lot of other people in the summertime, you really need serious refrigeration. So you cut ice in the winter, and you have this, and the ice lasts right up through the next winter, and then a lot of times you just throw the old ice out when you're cutting the new ice from that year.
Gosh, so how do you know when the ice is ready to harvest? Does there have to be a certain thickness, and how do you tell when to harvest it?
We usually we harvest right around the first week of February, which is that's the very height of midwinter, and at that time the light starts coming back. It's always super cold at that time. It's an ideal time. Before that, the ice might not be as thick, or you might get really, really cold weather and snow where you can't cut it. But the first week of February is actually ideal. We haven't had to move that forward because of global warming yet, and even today, this year we had our coldest year of day of the year was on our ice harvest. We had a high of 20 below, as I mentioned. So it's really a solid date that we do it the first week. We celebrate, I'm not sure if you around the world, but it's called Groundhog's Day. It's the second of February, so it's always around Groundhog's Day, when which actually measures the 6 more weeks of winter to go yet. So it's midwinter is the time to cut.
Great. And how many blocks, is there a minimum number of blocks that you have to cut for to take you through the summer for refrigeration?
Yeah, I never cut the blocks, but we have our ice house, which is buried under 12 feet. It's about 6 by 6, 6 high, and 6 and 8 by 8. So this is feet, by the way, not meters. And so we fill that. We cut it until we fill it up, and then anything extra we put in next to it. There's another room called the root cellar, which is not ice, but the root cellar is another underground cavity that's blocked. I mean, it's real clean. You utilize the coolness of the earth there during the summer for a lot of refrigeration. That was common. Root cellar is very common, still is in some places. And any extra blocks of ice, we just throw it in the root cellar. That keeps it a little extra cooler during the winter.
Right. Okay. And so, Nathaniel, then, in terms of the filmmaking of it, it was obviously incredibly cold when you were filming it. How did you and your team and the equipment deal with that really cold weather?
Yeah, I mean, like, luckily we worked with Minnesotan crew who are pretty used to working in those conditions, but still, at times it can really suck, particularly if you're holding like anything metal or that's going to be really responsive to cold weather. It's just like, and standing still isn't really conducive to maintaining body heat. So like, yeah, like the guys that we worked with, obviously, it was a what do I say it? I mean, it looks what it was like. So I mean, it was one day, and it was a long day. But I mean, it could have been a lot colder. It could have been really sleeting. I mean, I think we lucked out with just the type of weather that we got. The year before, it was actually probably too warm, right, Will? Like the first year we came up, it was actually maybe dangerously too warm that they were considering not putting the horses on the ice. I think it was going to be maybe risk of it breaking. So, and then the following year was like probably a perfect year. But then the ice conditions always, like, it's funny when you're looking at it from a filmmaking standpoint, the main year that we filmed, which was that cloudy, real sleeting snow kind of look, the actual ice conditions might not necessarily reflect how good it looked for us. So yeah, but it was fun. Like, I mean, whilst we're not, pulling the saws and doing all that hard labor, the film crew have the same sentiment as the people working all days. You really look forward to that warm, cozy cabin at the end of the day with a hot meal and good company.
I bet. And so, Will, over the years, like you were just sort of slightly indicating about the dangerous side of it, obviously you've got the risk of potentially falling into the freezing water, and then you've got the chainsaws and things. Over the years, have there been any scary moments, or has it all been? I mean, obviously you know when to go on the ice and not, but have there been any scary moments?
Not really. The moments are okay. I mean, nothing compared to an expedition, but we do cut with electric chainsaws right now, and you have to keep people away from the chainsaws, and then eventually we'll be phasing out the chainsaw into more of total electric ways where it's quiet. But it's safe. But you're dealing with a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. There's horses that you have to mind. When people are running around. The saws, and then there's open water, but it's just a small area of open water. So, but that one time that it was wet on the ice. Sometimes you get water on the ice, which is common here. The water seeps up and then freezes again. That could have been dangerous with the horses on the ice on that year. And I'd say, we get water, real warm ice fall, probably one in every 6 or 7 years. It's where it's just like, wow, is this the end of winter forever? And then the next year, it's a record-breaking cold. So that's the way it is here in northern Minnesota. The winter is not leaving us. We're still getting the warm weather, but instead we get these outbreaks, especially in the spring. Our jet stream is starting to weaken, which is a global warming phenomena. And the jet stream is like a gate that keeps the cold to the far north, but with a weaker gate, the sheep get through the fences. So we've had record cold springs here not this year, but the other 2 years. So with climate, we're getting not just a warm up, but we're getting all these variations. So it can vary at 40, 50 degrees and within 36 hours. So that's climate change. That's why it's called climate change.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, a big theme of the film is the concerns about climate change, particularly as well. You telling viewers, obviously, you have been an eyewitness to its impact in the Arctic and Antarctica with your polar expeditions. So can you expand a little bit more on that? Do you think that there's going to be a real impact in your area of climate change? What are your biggest concerns?
Well, the biggest concerns here is we're getting these what's called straight line winds, these incredible strong winds. They come, if you look at a thunderstorm coming in, a lot underneath the storm, there's this sort of a roundish cumulus clouds that used to be higher atmosphere. That's actually coming to the ground. So you get these downdrafts that hit the ground at tremendous, and then they spread out. So it's called a straight line wind, and that takes out the whole forest. And in the boundary waters that I referred to, we had a huge storm in 1999 that wiped out about a fourth of the boundary waters. I mean, 250,000 acres. It took everything down. And then when it takes everything down, it takes the seed trees of the virgin forest, and then you get deciduous forest coming in. So I see up here, it's really these straight line winds that totally wipe out the forest. We're getting a gradual warm up where the deciduous trees like maple that are around, but oak is appearing everywhere. So it's slowly going into, a deciduous forest. We're right at the very edge here of the boreal forest. So we can expect, they're at the very edge of the moose population, for example. So since we're on the boundary, of course, we're gonna see a lot of variations. But it's not that we're going to lose winter. That's the good news. Because of the weakening jet stream, we get these incredible incursions of super cold weather. About 10 years ago, the weather for the North Pole, the polar vortex, actually shifted over between Minneapolis and Chicago. And in the North Pole at that time was very warm. So you get this crazy weather back and forth. So we won't lose our winter, but we get lots of variation. But that's why we cut midwinter, because you get your best opportunity there, because you do get variations up to 70 degrees, from 40 below to 30 above, or even 40 above. But it's pretty stable weather there. But on either end, when it freeze up and break up, when the ice breaks up, there's a variation now of about 7 weeks. Sometimes there's ice on the lake on the second week of when opening fishing season, which is usually around the 14th of May. Sometimes it's iced out. And sometimes that ice is open on April 1st. So you have that variation in the spring.
Nathaniel, you captured the sense of community in this film beautifully. The teamwork, the evening meals, the gorgeous shots of looking through the windows into everybody enjoying the warmth of the fire, and then the campfire chats. Why do you think that it's so important in the film to try and capture that sense of community?
I think it was just obvious on everyone's faces that this was something that people were really wanting and they weren't getting in their lives. Like, I mean, everyone at the Ice Bowl was connected somehow, it seems, and the community always changing. But everyone just seemed to want to be there for that weekend, like, and then, you from some of the comments you saw in the film, but it just really seemed to be something that people are missing from their lives. And whether that's being outside, but I mean, like, we've talked about this before, but like, there's just something about being outside with a group of people that just does something for you as a human being. And I think you see that in the film, you see that in the community, you see that just in the setting. It's a physical and a spiritual connection that you get from, being around in nature. And I just, particularly for me, and I think for a majority of people that have gone through 2020 and this year as well, it's like we need that connection. And so it's just one of the things that was important to me, as I'm sure is important to a lot of other people. And hopefully this maybe reminds people that
Definitely. I think that was what was sort of really poignant about it, and particularly, like you say, that we haven't all been able to be with lots of people this past year. It kind of makes you want to do all those things again, and have that sense of community. And Will, so did you say, were you able to do the ice harvesting this year with a number of people, or did it have to be a smaller group? How did it work?
Yeah, we had a smaller group. I worked more with the local people in Ely, Minnesota, which worked out really well. That way, we didn't have to serve a dinner, and you can't serve a dinner inside, of course, right now. So it worked out real well. It was the first time I really connected in a long time with the local people. So it was great, and it eliminated a lot of our carbon footprint of people driving long distances to come here. So it really answered a question or concern that I had about the ice ball. Well, okay, you're cutting ice, but then if you have 40 people driving, well, what's the point here? And
That's interesting.
I
So do you
talked
think that
about
that will
the
be a thing going forward then? Do you think that's a consideration that you'll have?
Yeah, it's a big consideration. It went so well, and it's a great way of touching base with the local community. And we have other events up here, for people down in the city. But I think I'll probably keep it more local for that reason. Because I mean, I walk the talk. I've always I moved up here 50 years ago to make a clear land and make a homestead and to build a self-sufficient life. And that's the way I've lived, simplicity and so forth. I don't do it as a fad, and it's just a quality way of life that I've chosen for myself, the simplicity. And you really, and especially in these days, you've got to watch your double standards, because you can talk one thing, but there's too much of that, and especially when you're trying to educate people. So I think I'm going to make it more of a local event for that reason, and especially in the winter. I mean, people driving. I'm always concerned with people on the roads. Over time, if you have 40 people driving back and forth for 20 years, and there's storms and that, there's that issue too of safety on the roads. And but I think it'll be more of a local event just to keep that carbon footprint down, really down. So we're making a difference here.
That's really interesting how that sort of changed slight perceptions of it. So what, for both of you then, what do you, because we're gonna have to wrap it up in a minute, unfortunately, but what do you hope that audiences will get out of watching the film? Nathaniel, how about you first?
I mean, I hope they just get like, I mean, I think we talked about it with just regarding the connection to community. And I think community, land, relationships, like even just this wisdom and knowledge that I think we all get from the sense from what Will's life has been, which is like keeping the things from the past that worked to keep us moving forward. Like, let's not abandon things that work well just because we've found newer ways of doing things. That's not to say that we all need to go out and harvest ice, but I think we can reflect on what we've maybe overlooked and what can maybe be a part of us, and particularly in our relationships, in our communities, just focus on a community level. And like Will's just said, like, if we can start and localize, I think that's the center point for hopefully meaningful change.
Fantastic. And Will, how about you?
Yeah, I think the sense of community of people working together for, something that's really great. Out of doors is everybody working out of doors. I think we should reflect on sustainability. We're not all going to cut ice, of course, but there's simpler ways of doing things, and the solution to climate change I've always looked is social engagement, people working together. It gives us a common cause, and we can plant trees, we can do a number of things as a community, but the more we get outside and work together and be together, and especially if we can get outside with a diverser community of people that aren't just our type of people, so to speak, that we relate to. I mean, break those barriers, and even those that maybe political differences. There's nothing like getting to know a person by working outside. You break all sorts of barriers, and what you really see is humanity is humanity. We're all part of the big family. And when it comes down to it, especially in a working situation like this, we make these connections, which are very important for us. It gives us a lot of hope in these divided times, and we've lost our sense of community, I think, because we're divided in all sorts of different ways, and that's what the Steger Center is about. It's really forming community, and it's how everything is built here. And through the help with your little bit of help from your friends is basically, I think, the message here is.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, well, thank you so much, both of you. We're going to have to wrap it up, but it's been an absolute privilege to speak to you. So thank you so much. And I know that audiences of the London Mountain Film Festival will absolutely love the film, like I did.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great time. Thanks for setting this up around the world.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Liv.
much.